Hello and welcome to another episode of Expulsion at 50. My name is Dola Vassani. In October 2021, I had the opportunity to speak to a delightful man called Anthony Vassiliadis from his home in Santiago, Chile. Now aged 90 years, Tony shares his experiences of working with ICEM, the Intergovernmental Committee for European Migration. Back in 1972, ICEM was responsible for transporting about 5,000 Ugandan Asians to temporary and permanent resettlement countries. I hope you enjoy listening to Tony's story.
We stayed in Egypt until 1957 when Gamal Abdel Nasser wanted to nationalize the canal. The British, the Israeli, and the French landed, but the Americans didn't leave them, so they left back. So we came to Greece because there was nothing to do. I immediately entered, which is now IOM, but at that time it was the Intergovernmental Committee for European Migration, ICEM. And since then, I've been 35 years with them, working in more than 40 countries, special operations, and as chief of mission in various countries. It was formed in 1951, at the end of the Second World War. It was formed by 16 nations only, and the budget was very tight. Now there is about 104 nations, and the budget is about $2 billion. Can you imagine that? So now they have a bigger challenge. The refugee situation is getting bigger and bigger in the whole world.
So prior to his mission to Uganda, Tony had facilitated large movements of people from different European countries.
I had already enough experience in transportation. In Greece, we were receiving Jews from Morocco, Egypt, Yemen. They used to come to Greece, and we send them to Israel. We had Jews from Romania, Hungary, Russia. There was about Russia had about 3 million Jews, and they used to come every night by train, about 100, 150. We disembarked them from the trains, we put them in the hotel. Next day, we put them on planes to Israel. We used to send about 12,000 to 13,000 Greeks per year to Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, Canada. In 1956, 57, we went to Austria because we had the Hungarian Revolution, remember? They started coming into Austria, Germany, and from there, the American government accepted a lot of Hungarians. That's how there's a big contingency of Hungarian Czechoslovak.
Then in 1972, you find yourself in Uganda. So Tony, had you been there before?
First of all, I never had any relations with Uganda. So we came to Uganda on the 17th of October, 1972. And we started the operation until the 10th of November. What happened in Uganda in 72 is the story which I heard. During the 60s, the country's economy was about 70-80% in the hands of the Ugandan Asians. So one of the biggest industrialists, Madvani, owner of a sugar factory, passed away. Idi Amin proposed to Mrs. Madvani to get married. She says no. And that's when he decreed the expulsion order.
Well, there are many different stories about exactly what happened. So tell us about the ICEM operation in Uganda.
ICEM was requested to assist in the large operation. The director of the Department of Operation Transfer in Geneva organized a team to proceed to Kampala and initiated the procedure. There was the chief medical officer from ICEM Athens, two secretaries from ICEM Athens, and me, who was at that time the chief movements in Greece. And about another 2 or 3 persons also came from Geneva. We started an operation. First of all, we visited all airlines. We visited the UNDP representative at that time. He was a New Zealander there. He's the one that gave the red light.
So when you got there, Tony, you had to set up the office very quickly, huh?
We found a place not very far from the Speak Hotel, between the Speak and the Intercontinental. Your people was a very undisciplined people. The father had a British passport, the mother didn't, the children didn't. So naturally, the British came in and took the ones that had the British passport and left the other ones, the members of the families. So that's when the United Nations came in and we took out about 4,000 to 5,000 people to many other countries. The Canadians took another 5,000. They came in with their teams, planes, and everything. Those that came to us did not have any passports. They had ID cards. So there was the International Red Cross representative, whom we brought in too, and they issued a travel document which is valid for one trip from one end to the other. Then it's not valid anymore.
A travel document.
Yes, International Red Cross document was valid. In addition, also, we had many countries' representatives living in Kampala. For instance, the Austrian chargé d'affaires was in the office and he was stamping the Red Cross document with a visa. ICEM was already organized in Europe. We either had charter planes that came from Kampala to the first port of entry in Europe, and then from there, send them either to the States, Australia, New Zealand. About 50 or 60 also were eligible to work in Latin America. So we found Latin American countries that were interested in their profession, and some were sent because we had a program, which is to resettle professionals with contracts, with 1-year contract, and then you after 1 year with all the incentives of salary, medical support, transportation, everything. After 1 year, you either go back or the place who is employing you has renewed the contract.
And where in Latin America did they go?
I think they went to Brazil. Our first port of entry, as I said, was any airport in Europe. And then from there, we took them to the country that allowed them to be resettled. And once they find a resettlement place, that was not our responsibility, but the respective country. You know, at the end of the operation, I had a driver with a car. One night he says, "Let me take you to the depot of the airlines." And we went behind there, and the storerooms were full of the boxes of the Ugandan Asians that had left, and they were not loaded. The poor guys, your people, left with a suitcase and 50 pounds in their hands. There were so many Ugandan agents, they used to give me the keys of their cars, Mercedes. Said, take it, it's yours. I said, well, I cannot take it out of the country. They had to leave. There was a decree by the country's president who told them, if you don't leave on such a date, then we will cut your throats. You know that there were about 56 last people at the date limit. So we put them in your temple and with soldiers around. Idi Amin came there. He says, yes, he came and said to Ugandans, one of your people says, you see how I take care of you? I am guaranteeing your safeguard until you leave.
And what were people saying to you when they came? Were they very emotional? Were they angry? What were they sad? What were they saying to you?
They were sad. They were really sad. But there were a lot of people who were not rich. So for them, it was maybe a solution.
It was a way out of poverty, maybe.
That I am more or less also a displaced person because I came from Egypt to Greece. So it was just luck or maybe destiny that I should enter ICEM. I started organizing and assisting people wherever they could continue their life. And then when we were living, we got a cable from Nairobi. There were about 2,000 or 3,000 of your people who had gone from Kampala to Nairobi. And the Kenyan government didn't want them because you already had a lot of Ugandan Asians and Kenyan agents living there. So I went there and spent another month and resettled the Ugandan Asians to resettlement country in Europe and the States.
So tell us what happened 8 years later.
You know that I went back in 1980 and I started the operation in reverse. We had from Germany a lot of Ugandan agents from England who asked the German government if they could sponsor a program for the return of Ugandan Asians. So I went to Uganda again. The ones that were working for airline companies were now working for the Ugandan government. So I had the people, I knew the people. It was only 8 years difference. So they helped us and we set an office there and started to resettle back the Ugandan professionals. But you know, after 8 years, the central street was in the same state. The shops were burned, closed, nothing was there.
And what do you think ICEM learned from this experience? Because ICEM then became IOM, and this is their core business now, isn't it?
You want to know that the international community should learn from these experiences, no? As it's been done here in Chile. And history should remember these happenings and try to avoid these situations. Our memories are very short. We forget these situations. Unfortunately, people do not learn. like any dictator, they want to rule the country and fill up their pockets. No, how did he live in Saudi Arabia so many years? A lot of Ugandan Asians were rich, and they couldn't take out more than 50 pounds of that thing per person.
Wow, what an amazing person, being able to remember the events of 50 years ago. I hope you will share this podcast with your friends and family. Keep well and see you next time.